Today, I want to have a conversation with my brother. I want to have a conversation about the power of deficits. Here's what a deficit is: the amount by which something is too small.
Okay.
A deficit is the amount by which something is too small. The other word that came to my mind is a gap. So the amount by which something is too small, or a gap. And I'm seeing that there is power in deficit. There is power in gaps, because where something is too little, that means something needs to be added to it. Where there's a gap, that means there's an opportunity for that gap to be filled. And I see this in every area of life, but especially I'll start off with in the work world, in the business world, in the work world.
Okay.
A lot of times we see deficits as problems. So we start a new job, and once we start seeing all the problems there, all the deficits, all the missing things, we criticize that place, and we are assessing whether it's conducive for us to be comfortable there. I am finding that a shift of perspective is helpful. Deficits are opportunities. And a lot of times we walk into spaces of work not looking for opportunities to work. We're looking for opportunities to be provided for instead of opportunities to provide. And it's a different way of looking at stuff, right? It's a way of looking at things that is not self-centered. But I think that it's a powerful way of looking at things, because the more that we are able to add value to any situation that we're in, I think the more impactful we are, the better leaders we are, and the more fulfilled we are. I think when you start seeing your ability to solve problems, fill gaps, and add where there are deficits, I think that that's where you actually start feeling your value as a person. And I think that's where your value is able to be perceived for real. So you coming in and just doing your job description is one thing. You coming in and seeing deficits that maybe other people don't see, that's a different level of adding value. Now, there are a lot of reasons that we don't do that, and there are a lot of reasons why that's difficult to do. But I at least want to start by saying it's powerful. What comes to mind?
So first thing that comes to mind is, I think that everything is taught us to be problem identifiers and not problem solvers. Especially in the workplace.
Yeah. That's good.
Everybody's looking to identify the problems.
Yeah.
Most people aren't looking to solve any problems, even at a job. I've been working since I was 14.
Okay.
So I remember my first job.
You love saying that, bro.
I started.
You love saying that you've been working since you was 14.
Yeah, man,
in case you guys didn't hear, he's been working since he was 14. He was 14 years old when he started working, and he has not stopped since. He's been working since he was 14.
That's a long time in the game.
It's a long time in the game, bro. I just want to make sure that the people understand. I want to make sure the people understand.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Got you. All right. You've been working since you was 14. What have you learned since then? What have you seen?
My ability to feel secure at my job, even when I was 14, is I was filling gaps. Nobody was cleaning the bathroom, so I did. That wasn't my job as a bagger. But I knew the bathrooms needed to be cleaned, so I cleaned them. And that made me feel more secure. I've seen a lot of people get jobs and they just identify the problems. Versus
the bathrooms are messy. Y'all need to make sure these bathrooms get cleaned. Yep. Where's the bathroom cleaner?
Yep. And even as I move in different levels of leadership, I've seen that hinder a lot of people from excelling at their job. My question to you on this one is, what value do you think having a different perspective on it actually adds to a person?
So you're asking me what value I feel like it adds to me if I have that shift of perspective?
Yes.
Okay. One, I think the first thing is it differentiates you, just like you just said. where you are coming in, I think, with an elevated mindset. I think it's a higher way of thinking. I think it's a more Jesus-like way of operating, to say I'm not just relegated to what I've been asked to do, but I'm actually willing to serve and fill needs in a way that benefits other people, whether it benefits me or not. I think that grows you as a person, but I think that it also provides opportunities for you to really actually thrive as a person and figure out what your giftings actually are. Because if you only do the stuff that you get asked to do, you might actually be missing out on learning ways that you can contribute that you didn't realize. You might run into some things that you're good at that you didn't know you were good at because nobody asked you to do it. So for me, there have been several jobs where I came in being asked to do one thing, but I'm actually more gifted at another. And instead of just begging for opportunities to do those things, I've learned that the best way to grow and to add value is to find ways to serve with that gifting. So that's different. So sometimes we'll ask for opportunities, and it's not bad to ask for opportunities. It depends on the type of work environment that you're in. It depends on the culture. It depends on a lot of different things. But sometimes we'll be looking for doors to be open of opportunity instead of looking at deficits and saying, okay, how can I fill that? For you, you could have said, I'm 14 years old, I'm working at Kroger, and I have dreams of not being a bagger. I want to be the cashier. Yeah. And you could just be asking for opportunities to be a cashier, or you could be looking at where there are deficits and filling that and find out that you're really good at something. So for instance, the bathroom being cleaned, right? You go, you decide to clean the bathroom. You might realize that you're actually really good at that. You go and try something else and are like, oh, I'm actually really good at stocking too. You might try all these other things and find out that you're good at these other things, which actually means you probably be a good manager. Because you can actually help each and every department grow, right? That's just an example based on what you just said. But you might find like, oh, I'm actually really good with people. I wanted to be a cashier, but I'm actually really good at all these other areas in the business, and I'm good with people. I'd actually probably be a really good manager. And I don't have to ask somebody to make me a manager. I can just start functioning in that from a serving standpoint rather than a demand standpoint. So it may be like, hey, I actually found this way of cleaning the bathrooms. I actually found this way of stocking. And it's a gift. I'm giving, I'm serving. And I think that grows you as a person. It grows your capacity. It helps you to hone skills that you may not have been asked to hone. And I think that it actually creates opportunities for you to be seen at some point to do something at a higher level. So for instance, like even in my current role, from a ministry standpoint, I feel like my gifting is in teaching. I could either ask for more opportunities to teach. I don't really need that. I get an opportunity to do it frequently. But just for the sake of example, I can ask for more opportunities to teach, or I can look for more opportunities to serve in that way. And so I connect with the other guys who teach, and I try to see how I might be able to serve them, especially some of the younger guys, not to say that I've been in the game forever, but some of the guys who I can help, I try to help them. And I'll talk with people through their messages and talk with them through studying. I'll teach them how to use the software that I use to study the Bible. And that's not for me to try to get an opportunity. It's just an opportunity for me to serve and add more value. And I think that it helps me as a person as well to even feel a sense of contribution and fulfillment. It feels good to be able to help people, and especially in a way that you're good at. And so if you're good at something, look for ways to help people with that, So
I think a good piece that I think you're bringing up that's kind of really hitting me is typically we only talk about giving from the sense of financially. I see somebody, let me give and be helpful in that way.
Yeah.
They're saying giving in service.
Yeah.
I think that's a crazy shift in mindset from giving financially.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the most significant way that we can give is with our time and with our giftings. I think that it's great to give financially. I think it's needed to give financially, but I think it's more fulfilling to give from the treasure of our knowledge and our giftings. Me teaching somebody how to do what I do, I think is more fulfilling than writing them a check. Both are needed in different situations and different seasons. Some people, they don't need your information. They need money to go do something, and that's fine. But if we get into a space where we only view our giving through, all right, I'll write a check, we're missing out on a lot of fulfillment on our own end. I think we were created to interact with people in that way. I think we were created to contribute to people from our area of gifting. And I think that's where a lot of us miss out on purpose, because purpose is found in the gaps. Purpose is found in the deficits. If this place, I won't even say from a workplace, if the world had everything that it needed, if there were no gaps, there would be no need for you and I. But we are here to fill deficits. We're here to fill gaps. And so when we see gaps, it's not for us to critique the gaps. And not saying that we never critique anything. Yeah. Some things need to be analyzed. They need to be critiqued. There's a healthy place for that. But when all we do is critique, then we miss out on our opportunity to contribute. Because sometimes we don't see that that's even what we're here to do, but we are here to contribute. And sometimes you're seeing a deficit that nobody else sees because you are the person who is actually able to add to it. You're the person who's actually able to fill this gap. We're going to see gaps that other people don't even realize are there because it's not their area of gifting. And sometimes we are so gifted in an area that all we do is critique, and other people may not even see it at all. And all we do is critique because it comes so naturally to us that we think that it comes naturally to everybody else, and they don't even see it. But you're so gifted in that area that you think it's normal and natural, and it's not. It's just your area of gifting. And I think that's where getting in step with God is so important in walking out purpose, because he'll start teaching you, like, no, this is actually how I've gifted you. And it comes so naturally to you because I've deposited this in you. But I don't want you to be ignorant and think this comes naturally to everybody. This is a gift. That is the nature of a gift. It's been given to you. You didn't strive for it. You didn't build it. It was just given to you. And so it feels natural, and you think everybody else has that, but they don't. And so sometimes when you're seeing a deficit, it's an opportunity for your gifting. And that's why we don't need to automatically criticize and condemn when we see deficits and we see gaps, even when the gaps look like it's impossible for us to ever fill them. Because sometimes we can come into an organization, we can come into a church, we can come in anywhere, and we can say, oh, it would be I see this problem, but there's no way I could ever be the person to help with this. Yeah. I was that person in many ways. I never ever thought I would be on staff at my church. Yeah. All the circumstances said that that would not be the case. Mm-hmm. If I was just looking at the circumstances in front of me, I could not have charted a path there. It wasn't like, oh, well, if this and that happened, then I would be. It was like, there's no way. I could never see that happening. Who would hire me there? I barely know anybody. Like, those were the things. And aside from that, it wasn't like even what I wanted at the time. And so I could easily have just looked at everything like, it is what it is, and I have nothing to contribute. And it's crazy in hindsight now, looking back and saying like, wow, God actually intended for me to play a significant role in my church. I play a significant role in a lot of areas of my church, and I never would have thought that I would. I play a significant role in different people's lives that I never thought that I would. And I could easily have just looked at their lives and been like, oh, they could probably do better at this or better at that, and not see the opportunity for me to help.
Like, I want to camp out there because it's easy to pass by that. And I think you touched on it. I think that that's a big reason why people have a hard time finding a church home. Mm. 2, I believe you danced on a very big problem when people are looking for their purpose. Is they forfeit it because of all of those voices that say, hey, I see the problem, These are all the reasons I'm not qualified to solve the problem.
Yeah.
What do you say to that person who's trying to make that shift that, hey, I see these problems at my job. I see these gaps at my job, but they're huge shoes. I'm not in the position to make a difference. I don't see how I'm equipped to solve this problem at my church or to tackle this task. How do you make that shift? Well, big question, but
yeah, no, it's a really good question. I'm thinking through the different ways that I can answer it because, so I guess that's two questions. So the first is, which one you wanted me to answer first, about church or about purpose?
Yeah, I want to start with purpose because I think that's all inclusive.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of people are standing right there on the fence on that one.
Got you. So when it comes to purpose, so purpose implies intent. Purpose means reason, intent. Not your intent, God's intent. You didn't choose to be here, so you can't make your own purpose. If you got to choose to exist, if you chose to be born and you had a reason that you were choosing to be born, then you could determine your purpose. But you did not choose to be born. You just showed up here. So the purpose was determined before you got here.
That's good.
So that means that you have to access whoever made that decision, right? Who I believe is God, that we access through Jesus Christ. And when I'm following Jesus and I'm walking toward God-given purpose and living in God-given purpose, then my circumstances and my qualifications are not the determining factors. It's about his will. Who can stop God? If God is determined this is going to happen, what circumstances could stand in the way? What qualifications could be a real issue? Jesus says he opens doors that no man can shut. He shuts doors no man can open. And so your purpose is not limited to your circumstances or your qualifications, but it is limited to his desires. So I got to know what his desire is. And then when I know what his desire is, that is why faith is required. That is where faith comes into play. I don't walk by sight. I walk by faith. Faith is the evidence of what we do not see. It's the evidence of what's hoped for. It's the conviction of what we cannot see. So if I'm walking by a conviction that I cannot see, what I see is my qualifications. What I see is my circumstances. What I see is all the reasons that I'm not able to do this, but I have a conviction about what I can't see. That's faith. And so I think that our purpose requires faith. I think that God designed it that way. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, is what the Bible says. He's just designed things to operate based on faith for the purposes of his will and his pleasure. And he's designed faith to be the currency of the kingdom. That's how purpose is accessed. And so I would say that without him, then you are limited by your qualifications unless you manipulate stuff. And that's where a lot of us find ourselves. Instead of moving by faith, we will start trying to manipulate situations. We try to portray that we are somebody that we're not because we might not be qualified or gifted or whatever it is. The circumstances might not be conducive to us succeeding in this area. So we manipulate the circumstances. We manipulate people's perceptions. We try to push other people down that might actually be more qualified. We'll lie on people and abuse people, and we will try to control situations. And we see that a lot in the workplace, right? See that a lot in the business world, that the business world is not necessarily full of the most secure people. It's full of ambitious people. And when you are moving off ambition without faith, without any accountability toward God, then you are manipulating your way into everything and perpetually insecure because you know you don't deserve to be here. And you can tell yourself that you deserve to be here, But a lot of times it's based on what you've sacrificed, and you're not always proud of what you've sacrificed.
Good. It's real good.
And so that gets back into the conversation about authenticity, where it's hard to be authentic in that way, and it's hard to have peace that way. So it brings us all the way back to say the deficits are actually an indication of where to put your faith. A lot of times that's what God is actually pointing you towards, saying, I'm actually calling you to fill this gap. I'm actually calling you to solve this deficit, but all you can see is the deficit. What you can't see is God's hand moving you toward filling it. You have faith in God's hand moving you, arranging things, orchestrating things, putting people in place. That's where faith comes in. I think it's so important when it comes to purpose to understand that faith is required, that what you see is what you see, but what you see is not always telling of what the truth is. Things could change in an instant. So for me, bro, if you would have put it all on me to be in the position I'm in right now, just pastorally, there's just no way. And I know it's hard to believe, it's hard to really understand the weight of that now, because all a lot of people know me for is now what I do.
Yeah.
But before this, there was no indication that this is where I was going to be. I felt like I was on a totally different trajectory in life, and I just did not see vocational ministry as what I would be doing, and I didn't see how things would pan out. Like, even if God wanted to do that, or even if I wanted that, the circumstances would have told me, bro, that's not going to happen. You need to change this and this and this and this and that and forge this path forward to make this happen for yourself if that's what you want. But that's not what I did. I just followed God step by step. Even when the steps that I was taking didn't look like they were leading here, I was just going where he was telling me to go, and he was orchestrating things to get me where he wanted me to go. But that's just the nature of it. Even if you look throughout the Bible, it's God's hand moving in people's lives. It's not their circumstances being conducive for their purpose. Yeah. It's not. In fact, none of us are actually impressed by the stories where people's circumstances were conducive for them to do what they did. It's when we look at a person whose circumstances say, man, you shouldn't have been able to do this, and yet you did. Those are the stories we write about, read about, make movies about, cry about, laugh about. Those are the stories we share to inspire people. And yet we want our lives to not have any of that because of how uncomfortable it is. And we want our circumstances to be easy peasy, and we want everything to just line up. We want there to be no gaps, no deficits, no needs, no room for faith in our lives because it's so comfortable that way. But then there's really no story to tell.
When you said that, made me think of faith the size of a mustard seed can move a mountain. That doesn't mean you don't see one.
Ooh, yeah.
Everybody,
yeah.
You may see the mountain. You may see the deficit.
Yeah.
Now we talk about faith.
Facts.
Now we engage with faith.
Yeah.
And that's good, bro.
Appreciate it. Did you want to talk about the church piece? Or are you about to go a different direction?
No, because I think a lot of people, when they go into, when it comes to like searching for a church or trying to find a church home, that's a huge chasm that I think everyone gets stuck at is I've gone around, I looked at churches, tried to find a church home.
Yeah.
And I've really gone around and I've kind of found what was wrong with every place.
Yeah.
Hey, they don't have this, or they're missing this.
Yeah.
And that has not been the thing that's propelled people to get involved in a space. It's usually the thing that gets people where they remove themselves from stuff.
A lot of things just came to my mind, but we do this in a lot of different areas. Relationships is another one where we do this. But we'll start with church.
Yeah.
With church, not every deficit is one you're supposed to fill.
That's good.
Not every gap is one you're supposed to fill. So that doesn't mean you just go to whatever church and you're like, yo, I'm about to fill all these gaps. No. No. That is not the approach that I would suggest. Okay. However, I think the place that God has for you has enough indicators of this is good before I say it. It just spoke to me. That's funny. When we are walking with God, one of the first things that he helps us by showing us is our deficits. And so you got to know your deficits. That's a part of self-awareness. So if you understand what your deficits are, then when you get to, we'll start with a church. You get to a church, there should be enough there, enough indicators that say, hey, this place has what I need for my deficits. And it also has some deficits that I can meet and fulfill. So there's like a coming together like this where my gaps are being filled and I see gaps in this place that I could fill. Yeah. That is a mutually beneficial relationship. Yeah. If you try to go to a place that only fills your gaps and only fills your deficits, you're looking for something that doesn't exist. And if you're looking for a place that fills all of your deficits, you also are looking for a place that doesn't exist. There should be like enough. You know what I mean? That's like a relationship. When we're looking for a spouse, same thing. If I'm looking for somebody who's only going to fill my needs, I'm looking for the wrong person. And if I'm looking for somebody that can't fill any of my needs and I'm only filling theirs, that's an unhealthy relationship. It's an unhealthy relationship with a church. It's an unhealthy relationship with a pastor. It's an unhealthy relationship with a workplace. It's an unhealthy relationship with a spouse when you're only filling that person's needs and none of your needs are being met. Healthy relationship happens when we are both aware of our deficits and we are both willing to serve each other to meet our deficits. So if I'm at a workplace that all I do is help this place and my needs aren't being met, that could be a temporary season that I'm supposed to be there. And God may be calling me there for a particular season, or it might not be the place for me, but I know it's not the place for me long term if this is the situation. Doesn't mean that I got to leave right now, but I do know that long term, this can't pan out to be healthy if only one of us is having our needs met. Same thing in any relationship with a church. If that place adds no value to you and you only add value to that place, well, what kind of church is that? That's not the church that Jesus is building. That doesn't even sound like God to me, where all you're doing is contributing and receiving nothing. That doesn't sound like God to me. But you also can't be looking for a place that is just customer service for you and you're not showing up to contribute anything, which is a lot of our approach to church and why it's hard for us to find a church, because we're looking for somewhere that doesn't exist, a perfect, ideal paradise that does everything perfectly and that requires nothing from us. But I think one of the cool things that happens is we will be able to deal with some of the deficits that we have not being met as we're filling deficits in other places. So, for instance, at a church, there may be some areas that you feel like are lacking in terms of fulfilling you, but the more you get involved to meet needs in that space, you may find another area of fulfillment for yourself. Because we'll get in and we'll start critiquing stuff that doesn't really matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. Like you might come in and be like, oh my gosh, these songs just drive me crazy. It's not meeting my needs musically, right? Then you get involved in a young person's life and you're able to mentor them through some stuff. And now the songs is like that deficit, my musical preference versus the deficit I'm filling in this person's life, it's overshadowing this now. And then, I think the same thing happens in relationships. A healthy relationship has two people who have needs and those needs are being met. They're not always being met at the same level at the same time. Sometimes you're going to be pouring out more than you're getting poured into. That's just the nature. There's an exchange. But if you find yourself being the only one pouring out, that's not going to last. Yeah. When we're looking for places and people to have relationships with, and ultimately the places we're looking at are people. A workplace is full of people. A church is full of people. We are looking for people to have relationships with. An indicator it's a healthy relationship is somewhere that works for the deficits you have and somewhere that has deficits for you to help.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I think when you said, I think about like my job, like when I was looking for a job as a server.
Mm.
And when you're looking for a job as a server, you don't want a place that doesn't have high traffic, but you also want to be in an area where it renders good tips. So I need y'all to need something, and I need y'all to be able to fulfill a need of mine.
Yeah.
And then at that point, now we in a space where we're both benefiting.
That's good.
I'm getting your catch up.
Yeah.
But you also leaving me a nice tip.
Yeah. That's good.
And now we both walking away thinking what a great experience we've had.
Facts.
Most people don't talk about serving in a good light.
Yeah.
Serving is thought as bottom tier.
Yeah.
Right? I think what you're saying with the shift of perspective.
Yeah.
How do you get to a space where you value serving and not getting anything immediately? How do you switch that? Because I think that's where people get real life example. People get a job. They get a new role. They don't make the coffee for everybody in the office because it doesn't render results immediately. How do you shift? Because, I can say, I've been at jobs and I've seen that me coming in and taking out the trash or, getting coffee made for everybody in the office pays off later on, but most people don't never get to that point.
Yeah.
So how do you make that shift?
I think you have to learn the value of investment. That's ultimately what you're talking about is having an understanding and appreciation for investment. And I think it's something that really distinguishes successful people and unsuccessful people a lot of times is your capacity and your threshold when it comes to investment. Investment implies that you don't get an immediate return. It implies that you expect a return. That's investment. Spending is gone and I don't get anything in return. Investment means I'm spending, but I'm expecting a return. I think that serving is not spending. Serving is investing. And the primary thing that you are investing in when it comes to serving is relationships. And I think relationships bring the best reward. They give actually the highest return when it comes to investments. But a lot of times we're so internally focused that all we do is spend our time on stuff that we think is going to fulfill us in the moment instead of playing the long game. And so, for instance, say I'm serving in my marriage. There is no guarantee that me doing a kind gesture for my wife, there's no guarantee that that's going to get me any immediate return. It's not even always a tangible return. But you better believe that when I serve my wife, it's an investment. I don't feel like this is just wasted. This is going to come back in her feeling loved, in her feeling appreciated. It doesn't mean that it's going to get a gesture back to me. That's not always what I'm looking for. But I'm investing in our relationship. And so if my wife feels loved, that does benefit me in terms of increasing the health of our marriage. That benefits me. And I think the more you're able to view things through that lens, man, an investment in any relationship, I think is a wise investment, especially as a follower of Jesus. This is why we should be the best investors in relationships, because God has chosen to make his appeal to the whole world through people. God has chosen to have things that way. This is why Paul said we're ambassadors for Christ, imploring that people would be reconciled to God. That's the message that we're carrying. And so God is sending a message through people. He's essentially appealing to people through our relationships. When we invest in relationships, you may invest in a coworker and it never benefits you work-wise. You may not ever get a raise off of it. Nobody gives you a thank you or anything, but it's an investment in that relationship that could potentially lead to a conversation that God is able to make an appeal through. And so when I'm investing in relationships, a lot of times that's what's on my mind. At the very least, at the most, oh, I can get a ton of stuff from this. All types of stuff can come back from investing in a relationship. At the very least, I'm leaving a door open for God to make an appeal through. So I really can't lose. And as I'm serving people, I'm showing them the character of God. Not just my own character, I'm showing them the character of God. Because like you said, a lot of times serving is looked at in a negative light. That's why Jesus saying it was so revolutionary. This is why Jesus saying the greatest among you will be the servant of all was revolutionary, because nobody thinks that way. Nobody does that. But God is saying he actually operates that way. God himself serves. God serves. God helps us when he gets nothing from us. He needs nothing from us. And he intervenes in our life and helps us and serves us. And we pray and we ask him for petty stuff all the time, expecting that he will actually do it, right? God, help me get to work on time, even though I left late.
Yeah. No facts.
And God many times will actually do stuff like that. Like, why? He just loves and he serves.
Yeah.
And it's an investment in relationship with us.
Yeah.
It shows us how good he is. But what does he really get from that? You see, it's like it's intangible. He does get from it, but he doesn't at the same time. And I think that when we look at our relationships through the lens of investment, that's when we're able to make wise decisions. And I think just about every area in our life needs to be looked at from an investment lens instead of just a spending lens and an immediate return lens. What am I getting from this? What am I getting from this? What am I getting from this? If we just look through that lens, then we'll miss out on a lot of opportunities because you won't always see the immediate return. Some of that just comes with age. You live enough life and you see like, oh snap, a decision I made 5 years ago affected me today, whether good or bad. And you start thinking different. So that's sometimes what time just teaches you.
Yeah. One of the things that you said that stood out to me right there was, I think I've seen a lot of people make that investment in business with a networking event.
Yeah.
Or a cold call.
Yeah.
Or a dinner.
Yeah.
They don't let it spill over into their relationship with their wife or their husband.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the key things that you brought out is this principle works, not just your relationship with other people, but also in your relationship with God.
Yeah.
Hey man, this is a very valuable way to spend your time.
Yeah.
Versus just spending time trying to get immediate gratification.
Yeah.
One of those, like, hey, you can say that again.
No, that's good, man. Yeah. And I think it all comes back to this idea of deficits. It takes a long-term investment mindset to look at deficits as valuable. Yep. Because meeting a need is not usually going to give you an immediate return, but it will typically give you the highest return.
Yeah.
Boom. Man, we could talk all day about this, but here we are. I think that was a good conversation, man. I appreciate you. Understand the power of deficits. When you are able to look for needs, then you're looking for opportunities. And the more you look for opportunities to serve and fill those, I think the more purposeful your life is. Until next time.